You wake in the black gut of the ship. No windows, no lantern. Just the groan of wet timber and the reek of bilge. A stench like low tide mixed with a dead man's boot. Your stomach claws at your spine. 3 days now since the last proper meal. And before that was the biscuit.
Even the memory of bread
You reach into the canvas sack beside you, fingers finding the familiar hard edge of it. A ship's biscuit, what they call hardtack.
Firmly grasped, the brick-like biscuit resisted. Its aged, unyielding nature offered little comfort, yet it was all we had left.
Dense as a brick, old as sin. You don't light a candle. You learned not to. You shove it between your teeth and bite down, and there it is. That soft squirm against your tongue. That faint writhing. You chew faster, jaw working in the dark, willing your mind to go somewhere else. Somewhere clean.
A brief reprieve in the fields of home. Then the darkness returns, cold and complete.
Somewhere that doesn't smell like this. The weevil grubs burst between your molars, sour and wet, and you swallow before the thought fully forms. Because the thought will break you. And on this ship.
When you close your eyes out here, the darkness shows you things you thought you'd buried forever.
To the victors go the spoils! Pass the rum! Another round for everyone!
A broken man doesn't last. You think you know what pirates ate. Roasted meat on open fires.
A fine haul and an even finer feast. To us!
To us! May our flagons always be full.
And our bellies fuller.
Rum sloshing in carved cups. Laughing and feasting on the spoils of the sea. Every story, every film, every painting says the same thing. Abundance, excess, freedom at the table.
Forget the stories they tell you. There are no fairy tales out here, only the truth of the wood and the waves.
That's the fairy tale. Today, we drag that fairy tale over the gunwale and drown it. The reality of a pirate's diet was a slow war against starvation, rot, and the creeping death of a body eating itself alive. No glory, no feasts. Just desperation and filth, stretched across months of open ocean with no end in sight.
Self-consumption.
By the end of this, you will never look at your dinner the same way again. This is Wicked Waters. Let's start with the lie, because the lie is deeply comfortable. Hollywood loves a pirate's table. Gleaming rum bottles, haunches of mystery meats sizzling over open flame, exotic spices plundered from some merchant's hold. There's always plenty. There's always more. The pirate captain raises his goblet and toasts to freedom, and the crew bellows agreement around a meal fit for kings. It's intoxicating, that image, and it is complete fiction. The truth about provisioning a pirate ship is ugly from the first step ashore. Legitimate merchant vessels and naval ships provisioned through official channels, port authorities, contracted suppliers, crown budgets. Pirates had none of that. They bought what they could scrape coin for in lawless ports, stole provisions from prizes when luck ran with them, or simply launched with whatever rotting surplus the local market couldn't sell to anyone else. That meant the food came aboard already compromised, already dying. Salt beef packed in barrels that had been filled and refilled over years, the brine going brackish and thin. Hard biscuits baked weeks or months before, sometimes years before, by shore bakers who knew perfectly well their product would sit in a dark hold for a very long time. And why couldn't they just fish, you ask? Why not haul nets and eat fresh? Aye, some did. When anchored in shallow harbors or sailing near productive shoals, fishing offered relief. But a ship underway in open ocean, running before a trade wind, chasing a prize, fleeing a man-o'-war, didn't stop to drop lines. Speed was survival. Hunger was the price. Men signed the articles knowing they'd eat badly, because badly was still better than the plantation, the debtor's prison, or the Navy press gang that would work them to bones for a king's wage that never actually arrived. Piracy attracted the desperate, and the desperate don't negotiate their rations. So what did a pirate actually eat in the Golden Age? Let's go through it, methodically, thoroughly,
Grab the coffee and run.
because each item on this list is worse than the one before it. The foundation of every sailor's diet in this era was hardtack, ship's biscuit, sea bread, call it what you like. It was flour, water, and salt, baked twice until it had the texture and approximate density of pumice stone. The point wasn't taste. The point was survival. Hardtack could last for months without rotting, which made it the ideal long voyage ration. Except it didn't quite last that long without incident. What happened to hardtack over time was an infestation. Weevils, small beetles, laid their eggs inside the biscuits while they were being baked or stored. The eggs hatched into pale, fat grubs that ate through the interior of the biscuit, leaving it hollow and riddled with tunnels. By the time a crew was a month out of port, every biscuit in the hold was alive, wriggling. Some men picked the grubs out in daylight, flicking them overboard with a disgusted grunt. Others, and this is documented, not invented, ate in darkness, deliberately. Because if you couldn't see the grubs, the brain didn't scream. You just chewed, swallowed, and told yourself it was extra meat, protein, fuel. And in a sick biological sense, it was. The grubs provided fat and nutrition the biscuit itself couldn't. Men stayed alive, partly because of what was growing inside their food. Salt meat sat beside hardtack as the other pillar of the pirate diet. Beef and pork packed in barrels of brine, salt so heavy it could preserve meat for months. Again, in theory. In practice, the barrels leaked. The brine turned rancid. The meat inside took on a gray-green tinge and a smell that climbed up your sinuses and nested there. You soaked it in whatever fresh water remained, trying to wash the worst of the salt and stench away. Often the water you soaked it in was itself brown and foul. More on that in a moment. You boiled it over the cook's fire until it was technically safe to chew. It tasted of iron and old rot and something else. Something indescribable. Something your body understood instinctively as wrong. You ate it anyway. Every last gray, stringy fiber of it. Now the water. If the food was bad, the water was catastrophic. Fresh water at sea was stored in wooden casks, oak barrels that harbored bacteria the moment the first drops went in. Within weeks, the water inside turned cloudy, then brown, then thick with slime and reeking of algae and decay. Drinking it gave you dysentery. Not drinking it killed you faster. Men flavored it with vinegar to mask the stench, mixed it with what little rum they had to kill some of the organisms, drank it fast without breathing through the nose.
The storm is here.
Thirst overrides dignity. It overrides every instinct except survival. And so they drank the filth, and their guts paid the price. And the ship's surgeon, the carpenter or the cook usually, bled them for their trouble and made everything worse. But rotten biscuits, gray meat, and brown water were the good times. What happened when the provisions ran out entirely is a different category of horror. And that category has a name aboard every pirate ship that ever sailed too long between prizes. That name was hunger. True hunger. The kind that doesn't feel like skipping lunch. The kind that dismantles you, organ by organ, until your body starts consuming itself. When proper provisions failed, pirates ate whatever was aboard and alive. Rats came first. Ship's rats, those fat, bold creatures that infested every vessel without exception, nibbling stores and nesting in rope coils, became a food source. They were caught with bare hands or simple traps, skinned with a rigging knife, skewered, and roasted over the cook's fire. Men who had never considered touching a rat in their previous lives ate them eagerly. They were described by those who survived to write it down as tasting something like tough rabbit, if you were lucky, or like old bilge water in flesh form, if you weren't. But a rat was still protein, still fat, still calories when nothing else remained. The hunt for rats became a daily occupation, and on a bad ship with many mouths, the rat population collapsed quickly. And then what? Then the leather. Rigging straps, old belts, the thick hides used to protect ropes at wear points called chafing gear. Men boiled leather for hours until it softened enough to gnaw. It offered almost nothing nutritionally, your gut couldn't digest it. But the act of chewing something, anything, tricked the brain for an hour. Kept the madness at bay. Kept a man from staring too long at his crewmates and thinking thoughts that no decent human being should entertain. History records cases where those thoughts went uncontrolled. Extended voyages with total provisioning failure, not common but documented, occasionally ended in the final taboo. Marooned crews and shipwrecked survivors. The record there is stark and specific, and the survivors who made it back to land carried that knowledge in their eyes forever. Not romanticized, not mythologized, just broken men who did what starving animals do when no other option remains. But you didn't need to reach that extreme to be destroyed by what passed for a pirate's diet. Scurvy did it gradually, invisibly, without drama. The absence of fresh fruit and vegetables meant a total absence of vitamin C, and the body cannot store that nutrient for long. Within 6 to 8 weeks at sea without citrus, the first signs appeared. Fatigue so deep it felt like drowning in dry land. Then the gums, swelling purple, bleeding at the touch. Teeth loosening in their sockets like fence posts rotting in wet soil. Old wounds, healed years ago, reopened. Scar tissue dissolved. The body unraveled backward through its own history of injury. Every old cut and broken bone re-announcing itself in fresh agony. Men went blind. They lost control of their limbs. They hallucinated, burning and shivering at once on a pile of damp rope in the hold, dying of an absence. Not of a disease exactly, but of something missing that their body was built to need and couldn't manufacture itself. Pirate captains understood scurvy only in the vaguest terms. That fresh food seemed to help. That citrus was especially good. That the land cured what the sea created. Some made a deliberate effort to raid coastal settlements, specifically for fruit and fresh livestock. But raids cost time and risk and blood, and fresh provisions rotted within weeks at sea. The cycle was relentless. The scurvy came back. It always came back. Step away from the barrel of gray meat and the weevil-riddled biscuits for a moment and consider what this tells us. Not just about pirates, about the whole rotten machinery of the era. These men were not free, not by any honest definition of the word. They were trapped on wooden boxes in the middle of the ocean, slowly being poisoned by their own food supply, eating grubs in the dark so their minds wouldn't break, hunting rats as a luxury. The Golden Age of Piracy wasn't golden. It was the color of spoiled brine and infected water, brown, gray, and stinking. The men who chose this life chose it not because it was glamorous, but because every other option was worse. And even having chosen it, they suffered for it, day by day, meal by meal, gnawing on things that no human being should have to gnaw on, while the ocean stretched empty in every direction and no port appeared. There were no feasts, no groaning tables, no goblets raised to freedom. There was the dark hold, the squirming biscuit, the thudding skull-ache of dehydration, and the quiet negotiation every man made with himself each morning, whether today was worth surviving. Most of them decided it was. Most of them endured.
There is no escape.
And most of them died anyway,
The provisions are
not in the
gone,
glorious
and with
clash
them,
of boarding
our
axes
last
and
hope.
powder smoke, but hunched over the side rail, gut-wrenching, skin-yellowed, teeth falling into their palms. That is the pirate's feast. That is the reality behind the myth. Swallow it down. No candle needed. If you're still here, still watching, then you've got the stomach for this channel, and you're going to need it. Subscribe now, hit the bell, leave nothing on the table, because what we serve up here isn't for the soft-gutted. Every week we drag another piece of gilded myth off the quarterdeck and throw it to the sharks. Next time, we're going somewhere even darker. We're talking about the press gang, the brutal, systematic kidnapping of men from their own streets, their own beds, their own lives, forced at knife point onto Navy ships with no recourse, no appeal, no mercy. Men who never chose the sea, chained to it forever. The Crown called it duty. The men who survived it called it something else entirely. You won't want to miss it. The sea keeps its dead, but we make them speak.
Starvation changes a man. Pushed to the brink, you discover how thin the line is between humanity and the abyss.
Roasted rat. It kept me alive, but the taste never really leaves you.